Right guys, so let's move on to the painting of the human figures. So I've already just painted the ground area, and right now we're moving on to the painting of the figures. And here I use different colors to paint the figures here to make them more vibrant. As you can see right now I'm using the blues, and I'm gonna make it like pretty light at the top. Okay, so I'm gonna use like different colors like blues and reds to depict all these more vibrant colors, right? So using this small brush right now, I'm just trying to make sure that we have be able to control the movement of the paint on the human body. Just trying to make this light blue, which is the cerulean blue, on top of the black tone that we just did, and we have this cerulean blue. So just making sure that we have this entire part covered with blue, and then later on we are going to make sure that we will have all these blues and all these different kinds of colors and all these different kinds of bright colors like blue and red. And right now I'm just using the black kind of paint to paint the surrounding area. So there's this outline that forms on this figure, and just very quickly trying to make sure that we have this entire area covered with the blue, and that will give us some very nice and very cool kind of color tone when we combine this blue with the blacks. That will give some very amazing kind of colors. And you can see here that there's a blending of all these different colors. Right, so again here I'm just trying to make sure that we have this blacks. So there's a lot of dark tones here that I actually use to depict the figures, because they are being under that shadow. So right here using that red, again trying to depict this woman, most likely a Muslim woman, because she's having that tudung, and just trying to make sure that we have all these different colors. Right, so let's move on to the other figure. So again we have some of the people here taking selfies because it's a very nice environment, and so they really love this entire place, and so they want to have some photos of themselves in this place. And we have all these like dark blues, and use black paint to paint the heads and the other dark areas first. So as I mentioned earlier, I love to use the dark colors first, so I always paint the dark areas first. And so we have all these figures and we have all these dark areas. So the thing is, I use my eyes to kind of scan where are the dark areas, and just using my brush to kind of like paint in all the dark areas first before I actually move on to the painting of the other areas. Right, so we have the woman's shoes, the head, and also the shirt and the dress, and of course the backpacks and everything else. So all these things are actually making up the dark areas that we are seeing. So those figures at the very far end are really small, but we can still see those dark areas. So using the brush, just trying to make sure that we have all these dark areas that are painted first before we move on to the rest of the colors. And that is just my style, and that is just my way of doing, but there is no need for anyone to follow. But I find that this really works for me, and I really like doing this. Right, so now moving on to the rest of the figures. So right now still doing the darks, and we have all these dark blues, and we have all these dark grays, and so on and so forth. And so by using all these darks, that will give us an idea of where those darks are. Of course the luggage and all the backpacks and all the different details also contain darks, the back of the head, right? So this is how I actually paint, because one advantage of doing this is that you don't have to change the colors. You're just using one single color to paint in all the areas with the same color first before moving on to another color, and that would be something that is more convenient and more practical. And of course, now trying to make sure that we have all the darks in all the figures right there, so you can see all those small little shapes are actually the heads and the hair, and then we have some of the pants, the shirt. So right now, moving on to painting the light blues and the dark blues, right? So we have the figures with the blue shirts and all the different kinds of blues, just trying to make sure that we have all these things. So the thing is, when I paint all these small little figures and all these small little areas, I just use the same color and just apply it, and I see the original photo, I just look at all the shapes, and that is how I actually do it, to paint in terms of shapes. So I use different colors to paint the bodies of the figures, and we have like reds, we have browns, we have blues, and so on and so forth. And so right now, just using this red and just trying to make sure that we have all these figures, shapes that are being painted to form the bodies of the figures and everything else. So right now we have all these different shapes and different colors and different tones, and so using the brush, I'm just trying to make sure that we have all these shapes and colors that actually make up the bodies of the humans. We have the blue dress, we have the red dress, we have the skirt, we have the luggage, and we have the bodies, and all these things actually, just scanning the entire place to find all those red shapes, because that is what I'm actually painting in right now. So using all these colors, I'm just trying to paint. For example, there's a dark red kind of a luggage there, and that this man is actually holding, and you can see right now my brush is full of that red paint, and just trying to make sure that we have all this red paint in before we move on to the rest of the things. And so we have all these blues and grays and whatever colors, and of course when we use red, we can use different kinds of reds, we can use different kinds of like lighter red and darker red. So again, when painting figures, we don't want to repeat the same color for everything except black, right? So blacks are just blacks, but when we paint reds, we can also vary or change the reds, and we can also make sure that we have all these blues, different kinds of blues and different kinds of reds, and that is what will make this entire kind of scene more interesting with all these different changing kinds of colors. And you can see right now I'm just painting in all the details of the humans before we actually move on to the next thing. So very quickly, just trying to fill in all these details again. As you can see right now, I'm doing the brown, so just trying to make sure that we have all these blues and reds and browns and grays and so on and so forth. So trying to make sure that we have all these things into the figure. So we can paint one part of the figure and we can paint another area first, because that part cannot be painted for the same figure because it is still wet. So we want to move on to another area first before going back in, and that is exactly what I did. So that's why I have all these randomly applied colors all around the place before moving back to the same figure. Right, so we have some grays. Right, so using those gray tones, we are now doing the escalator area, which is that middle portion where we are going to use all these grays and browns and all these different shapes to create this area. Right, so we have all these long strokes, and we are using all these strokes to just try to recreate this entire area. So again, using the brush to help me with the painting of these handrails of the escalator, and just trying to make sure that we have all these strokes to depict all the bars and all the metal bars and all the structures and everything, and that will give us some very, very nice kinds of lines and shapes and so on and so forth. And so that will really give us all these amazing amazing kind of well-designed kind of gray tones that will give the interest, the viewer a lot of interest when they actually look at a painting. So we have subtly different grays, subtly different kinds of blues, bluish grays, and so on and so forth. That is how we actually form relationships between all these different shapes. Right, so it is important for us to have all these amazing lines and all these darker lines and lighter lines and so on and so forth that will make up this entire area. And so using the brush, just trying to make sure that we have all these things in. And then again, one suggestion here is to paint alternate portions first. So you can see I kind of like skip the portion that I just painted because I need to wait for it to dry first before moving on to paint those areas that were left white. Okay, so this is just one tip. In order to make sure that we have all the colors added in correctly, we want to wait until it's dry, and so we paint alternate portions first and moving on to paint those areas that were left white after they are dry. So using this line, just trying to make sure that we have all these handrails and handlebars and so on and so forth that are being added, and just trying to also make sure that we have all these brown lines and gray lines and so on and so forth, and that will really give us some very nice kind of colors. Right, so that is something that is very important for us to actually take note. And again, using the brush to kind of like very quickly make sure we have, you know, all these colors and all these amazingly designed kind of gray tones that is mixed with blue. So we have these bluish grays, and again using all these shapes just to form, you know, the different sections of the escalator, the different steps. Okay, so we don't want to have like the same blues and the same grays, and that will be truly, you know, uninteresting. But when we have all these different grays, that will make it more interesting, and viewers can view the different parts, you know, when they actually look at this part. So we have browns, we have, you know, the use of all these shapes that will depict the amazing kind of scene, and, you know, all these different shapes. And again, leaving white for the handrails and the areas that we see, you know, that will really give us some amazing kind of textures and colors and dark blues and light blues and so on and so forth. So again, right now we are actually moving into paint those areas that were left white. And again, dark blues, we have dark blues, we have light blues, we have, you know, all these different kinds of blues, and that will really give us all these amazing kind of colors and tones and textures. Perhaps there's no texture here, but we have all these colors that make up, you know, all these subtly differently designed kind of spaces. Again, using my brush, trying to make sure we have all these lines that make up the escalator. And so just using my brush, just trying to make sure we have, you know, all these light kind of blues and light purples and so on and so forth. So just trying to make sure that we have everything in, and again, using my brush, just quickly moving on to the painting of the rest of the areas as we move towards the end of this painting. As you can see right now, just trying to fill up the escalator area. So this escalator area is made up of all these subtly different grays and browns that show interest when the viewer actually looks at the painting. And we want to do the same for any other thing that we're painting, because that will not bore the viewer to death, and that will give them a lot of reasons to actually look at your painting, right? Hey everyone, it's KY Tom here. Thank you for watching my video. If you enjoyed my video, please hit the like button and comment down below. Do consider to subscribe to my channel for more art videos. Check out the links on the description below to find out more about my art, and I hope to see you in the next one.